These victims and their loved ones are worthy of our thoughts and our prayers, but there's more that's required.
We can make bipartisan common sense and constitutional progress on the issue of gun violence if we work together.
Senator Amy Klobuchar called for the passage of the Protecting Domestic Violence and Stalking Victims Act to close what is commonly called the boyfriend loophole.
Abusive dating partners now can buy a gun, whereas people who are married cannot. And we're just simply trying to close that loophole, which has been closed in many states, but not all states.
As part of the Violence Against Women Act, the House passed it with 29 Republican votes, although 172 Republicans voted against reauthorization, siding with the NRA and saying the loophole is too broad. Senator Klobuchar also referenced the Allina Health Clinic shooting that left 1 dead and injured 4 others. She touched on extreme risk protection orders designed to temporarily keep guns away from people at a high risk of harming themselves or others.
It had been reported that the police were aware that the shooter had actually previously made threats against this clinic.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer vowed to bring to the Senate floor legislation passed by the House that would require background checks for most gun sales and transfers.
And every time there's a shooting, we play this ridiculous theater where this committee gets together and proposes a bunch of laws that would do nothing to stop these murders.
The United States Senate, I hope some are listening, should immediately pass the 2 House-passed bills that close loopholes in the background check system.
Heidi Wigdahl, KARE 11 News.